Hello and welcome to Crit's Ringside Chat, your eyes, ears, and voice for pro wrestling in NYC, and your stop for honest critiques from an honest fan. Now, for our first installment of this new podcast series, I want to talk about an indie promotion that may or may not have a lot of eyes on them, and I would like to use this platform as a means of getting more people to watch. Now, this isn't to say that they need my help or anything. Clearly, they're doing well enough on their own. They've been in the business for about 10 years now. But I don't see a lot of people giving it attention it deserves. So hopefully this can help. Of course, I'm talking about the Pro Wrestling School mixed indie promotion, House of Glory, normally run in the NYC Arena down in Jamaica, Queens. We're going to be discussing their first show in NYC of 2025, which was Final Warning. And to start, we're going to open up with our opening contest, which was the main event versus the Cold-Blooded Killers for the House of Glory Tag Team Championships. The main event, consisting of Midas Black and Jay Lyons, versus Cold-Blooded Killers, consisting of Raheem Royale, Jay Armani, Nolo Kitano, and Charles Mason, has been a long-running feud for the past couple months, and it's all getting to a head soon. I can see big things coming the way for both our champions and our challengers. 2025 is going to be a big deal for the main event and Cold-Blooded Killers. Trust. What helps a lot is that despite these guys having feuded for multiple months, they always seem to have good chemistry. Nothing feels overdone. It doesn't feel like we're seeing the same stuff over and over again. They always find a way to bring new wrinkles to the story. These two teams have phenomenal chemistry with each other. Now, unfortunately, this match, while it was getting really good, it ended up ending in a DQ thanks to our resident shitheel ref, Giuseppe. I don't know many House of Glory refs by name, but I do know one, and that's Giuseppe. And fuck Giuseppe. Not that he's a bad person, he's just playing the shitheel ref role. We end off this little segment of the show with Charles Mason, the leader of the Cold-Blooded Killers, coming out and saying, fine, you want a shot at our tag team championships? You have it. But A, it's going to be in a 2 out of 3 falls match, and B, you're going to put something on the line as well. It's going to be the House of Glory Tag Team Championships versus the main event's career as a tag team. If the main event loses, they will no longer be able to tag together. Now, some of the greatest matches in modern history have been 2 out of 3 falls tag team matches. You think back and you think of cases like FTR versus Jay White and Juice Robinson, or The Revival versus DIY. So I have high hopes for this match, especially with these two teams knowing each other as well as they do. An interesting wrinkle of this is Jay Lyons accepting the challenge almost immediately, leaving Midas a little shook. Now, I don't know if this is going to actually lead to a split, especially considering, from what I've noticed, Jay Lyons tends to take more singles bookings than Midas does. But I'm looking forward to this match. This is going to be a great next contest. Moving on to the next segment of the show, we have Casey Navarro versus MMA flyweight Pumi Nikuta. First off, it's good to see Casey Navarro back in House of Glory. He's a former cruiserweight champion in his own right. If you're not really sure who Casey Navarro is, he's been around. He was on AEW Dark for a bit, where he had a really good match with Ref Fenix. He performed a bit with TNA, back when it was still Impact, in the big X Division tournament at Emergence, before finally signing with TNA and working with AJ Francis in his faction First Class. Now, Pumi Nikuta is one of House of Glory's new biggest signings. As I stated, he's a former MMA flyweight fighter, undefeated in MMA, holds 3 belts in MMA, and is currently undefeated in House of Glory, having 2 matches previously with former WWE superstar and UFC fighter in his own right, Matt Riddle, and Chicago native indie wrestler Joe Alonzo. Nikuta has taken to pro wrestling really well. He has the trash talk down, and he understands the basics really well. I could see him going on to do amazing things in the future. I can't say that he's world champion material just yet, especially since it looks like Charles Mason is going to be the one to take the title off of Mike Santana. But whenever Zilla comes back, I can definitely see Pumi Nikuta taking the title off of him. This match went on for about 2 minutes, with Navarro pulling the shitheel role of dodging, running away, before he finally gets into the match and Nikuta knocks him out with 1 shot. A really, really great match. Honestly, I wouldn't mind seeing Pumi Nikuta show up for Bloodsport. That type of match is definitely up Nikuta's alley. So if Solomon wants to send Nikuta out to Josh Barnett's Bloodsport, I think he would do really well. In addition, following the match, we saw Casey Navarro sell like he's a Looney Tunes character. Just a little bit of comedy before we moved on to the next match. Speaking of, our next match is for the House of Glory Cruiserweight Championship, featuring the champion, the infamous Darren Richardson, versus the mighty luchador made of butter, Mantequilla. I just really love the gimmick of Mantequilla. I'm just going to get right off the gate. A luchador whose name means butter and he enters to the Mucha Lucha theme song. Apparently he was a big hometown hero for the House of Glory. I wouldn't know. He was probably there before my time, but I fell in love with him almost immediately. He's great. Darren Richardson, on the other hand, he's really coming into his own as Cruiserweight champ. The feud he had with Amazing Red previously helped him a lot in terms of developing as a heel and him getting comfortable with himself as a character. The two of them together put on a really good match too. It's great to see Richardson not just relying on cruiserweight moves and developing his style as a hybrid more, seeing as how throughout the match he worked Mantequilla's leg and he won via submission. Now Amazing Red made his way out after the match in order to call out Darren Richardson, making it clear that this feud isn't over. And I look forward to the next match. Richardson and Amazing Red have a surprising amount of chemistry with each other. Before we move on to the next segment, I want to give a shout out to the Amazing Red, who is one of the most selfless people in wrestling that I have ever seen. Having been in the business for many, many years, he works as a booker and a trainer in House of Glory. He puts over his students and makes sure they come out the other side looking amazing. He has no problem doing the job if it means he creates the stars of the future. He absolutely deserves his Indie Hall of Fame induction. So Amazing Red, big ups to you, and I hope more people can see the work that you're doing. Our next contest for the show is what I consider to be House of Glory's bread and butter. It is a 6-way number 1 contenders match for the Cruiserweight title, consisting of Jay Bougie versus Jody Ora versus Dante Griffith versus Jared Diaz versus JJ Doze versus Sweet Cheeks Joey Silver. Now, some of you might be thinking, I don't know any of these names. And for me, it's a good thing. This is the thing that House of Glory does better than a lot of other companies. Surely, a lot of indie companies are going to introduce you to a lot of new stars that you have never heard of. But House of Glory, in my opinion, does it differently because not only are they an indie, they are also a school. So a lot of the wrestlers featured in these matches are also students of this company. Not to mention, 6-way matches serve as a fantastic way to highlight talent and make sure that everybody gets a chance to perform, show off for the crowd, and put themselves over. The amount of names in a given match you may not recognize, I will admit, I only recognize maybe 4 out of the 6 people in this match, and even then, Jody Ora I have only seen perform once beforehand. But it introduces you to a bunch of people that you've never seen before, without overwhelming you with too many unknowables in a way, say, a 20-man battle royale may, where it's just bodies on top of bodies, and you never really get to know who's in the match before you get down to maybe the final 4. Multi-man matches like this are perfect for highlighting your talent. After an intense 6-way match, it ends with, surprisingly, Jay Bougie getting the win. Now, given that Darren Richardson is a heel, I would have assumed that this was Joey Silver's time. But Jay Bougie put on a hell of a performance, and I'm actually looking forward to the match he's going to have with Darren Richardson. Big ups to you, Bougie. Next up on the list, we have the Dark Star Idris Jackson, followed to the ring by his manager, Hillary P. Wisdom, versus the War Machine ECW legend, Rhyno. This is an unfortunate case of the show changing course because the match was originally intended for the Crown Jewel champion Zilla Fatu to put his championship on the line against Rhyno. But unfortunately, Zilla is not medically cleared to compete, so Idris Jackson stepped in. And I'm going to be honest, I think this works out better than the original match that was intended. Because rather than just this being a simple showcase match between their mid-card champion and an ECW legend, they use this as an opportunity to further one of House of Glory's running stories, having the previous Crown Jewel champion, La Sombra, come out and push his feud with Idris Jackson, after Idris Jackson cost La Sombra his championship and won their steel cage match by basically running away. La Sombra making it clear that no matter where he is, it will be on site no matter what. So big ups to this match, which by the way, Idris Jackson won by hitting Rhyno in the balls and knocking him out with a chain. There was a lot of knocking out the ref spots in this show, by the way. More than usual. The House of Glory doesn't usually do these types of spots, so to see it happen so much in one show, it was surprising. By the way, I'm sure this is totally unrelated to anything, but during the meet and greets, Rhyno was wearing a PCO shirt. Given the frustration that both of these guys have with TNA, I guess it's pretty cool to see Rhyno standing with PCO in these frustrating times. And I hope the best for both of them. After a brief intermission, we have our big showcase match, which is the root of all evil, Charles Mason, versus AEW star Ricky Starks. This is another signature of House of Glory, where they put on special showcase matches, having a big-time star come in to face off against one of their students. Before we get on with the match, I just want to establish that I think Charles Mason is a really solid heel. He has a really firm grasp on his character and who he's meant to be. His character, by the way, is basically just Patrick Bateman, who doesn't even try to pretend to be sane. You see a lot of guys on the indies who grab onto gimmicks or special appearances or whatever and think that that's all they need to move on, along with just wrestling good, without really establishing their characters. Charles Mason is one of those guys who just gets completely lost in the character he plays. He didn't just pick it because he thought it looked cool. You can tell he spent a lot of time dedicating himself to the presentation, the mannerisms. He is firmly rooted within his character, and it shows because no matter what promotion he goes to, he has the whole audience chanting along to his theme song, "Fuck you." Now, Ricky Starks, of course, was massively over with the House of Glory crowd, and he's as good as he's always been in the ring. What completely floored me was during the match throughout, which, by the way, of course, Ricky Starks won, there were chants of "fuck TK" and "Raw on Netflix." I don't even want to begin to get into the bullshit. The only thing I can say on this subject is if people feel like that they have stagnated in a company and they want out, the best thing for you to do as a boss is negotiate with your employees and let them out to do what they feel is best for them. I totally understand Tony Khan's perspective. You're potentially giving the competition talent. But AEW already hosts some of the best wrestlers in the world as is, and there are just as many people who want to go to AEW as there are who want to go to WWE. So if Ricky wants out, let him out. And finally, rounding off our show, we have our main event, Mike Santana, our House of Glory World Heavyweight Champion, versus the Go to Sleep Club, the Fang in the Machine, Kenta. First off, Mike Santana is a goddamn hero in both House of Glory and New York as a whole. The amount of work and good faith he's built up within the company is staggering, especially given that he was allowed to run his own show for the company last year that was under his name and his banner on the same weekend as the Puerto Rican Day Parade, where he put a highlight on Indies Wrestling's best Puerto Rican wrestlers. The amount of work Santana has put in ever since he bet on himself and left AEW is amazing, and I'm just gonna straight up say I am so proud of the work that he's done for not only the culture but for himself. On the flip side, I was warned by mutuals that Kenta might be a bit washed. I was kind of proven right. That's not to say that Kenta is bad. He is a very good wrestler, but he spent a good 10, 15, maybe even 20 minutes just taking the piss out of Santana. He worked really slow. And the match went on for like a solid half hour. Don't get me wrong, it got really good towards the end, but I think maybe you could have cut 15 minutes from the match and it would have been just as good. Like comparing this match to another match that Santana had with another Japanese legend, Masato Tanaka. Half the length, about 15 minutes, but that match turned out much better in my opinion. There's really not much else I can say about it, but it's a match that Santana has wanted to have for years, so I can't fault him for it. Santana got what he wanted. To round out everything, House of Glory Final Warning was pretty good, all things considered. This is more a brief coverage of the show rather than anything like strictly analytical. We will get better as we go on, trust me. But for the first show of 2025, both for House of Glory and myself, we were off to a solid start. I was shocked at the lack of any women's matches though, to be honest with you. Granted, the only women that I can say definitively that are signed to and perform exclusively for House of Glory are Diamond Virago and Ultraviolet, and House of Glory's women's champion Megan Bayne was unfortunately performing in London for GCW at around the same time as this show. So Final Warning had no women's matches whatsoever, which is hopefully something that we can fix in the next show, whenever that may be. Looking forward to seeing more House of Glory as always. I hope you enjoyed me talking your ear off for a good 20 minutes. And remember, whether on your screen or in NYC, we will be seated. My name is Crit. Thank you for joining me at Ringside.